So does anybody have a pressing question they would like answered before we actually start the class?
I do not.
Anybody? So can I just share an aha right now with you guys? Okay. So does anybody know who Diana Kokoska is? Okay. So I've been a Bolt coach for 6.5 years. I'm also an OP. I was a team leader, a general manager, mega agent, rainmaker on a team. I had a lot of different roles in Keller Williams in the 12 years I've been with Keller Williams. And I was over Diana Kokoska's house in Austin, Texas, in Lake Travis. And this was probably about 3 years ago. And she had all the Bolt coaches over. So maybe there was 25 or 30 of us at the time. We go over for dinner, and her and her husband, Tony, are at the front door greeting all the Bolt coaches like in a line. And she's hugging us and kissing us. And she went through everybody, and she came to me and she said, so Richard, what question do you have for me? And I looked at Diana and I said, I don't have a question. And I was a little embarrassed because she caught me off guard. And so she said, what lesson do you learn? I says, from the verbiage you've just asked, I should have had a question. She says, so let me rephrase it. You get on a plane, you're traveling all over the country to Bolt. This is pre-COVID. And the person next to you is the CEO of General Electric. Are you going to have a conversation with him to find out how he got to where he is and his success, or are you just going to go to sleep? She says, no, I'm going to have questions. She said, what question would you ask him? She said, if you had the questions written in your phone when you're next to somebody important, you'd already have the question. Because when you see somebody famous, so let's say that you are next to somebody really famous, LeBron James. Now, if that's your idol, by the time you're sitting next to him, you're going to be intimidated and get nervous. You're not going to know what to ask. Does that make sense? So everybody should have a list of questions before you meet a person. That was my big aha. And when I just asked everybody, does anybody have a question? And not one person came forward. Anytime you're taking a class or meeting somebody, do your research who the person is and ask some questions. Have a question ready. So I don't meet anybody. When I go to training, I have a question. And I have a list of about 15, 20 questions on my cell phone that are general questions like, what's the biggest mistake that you made that led to your biggest financial gain? Things like that. It can be universal for the CEO of Universal Studios or General Mills. Doesn't really matter. So just wanted to share that with you guys. For those of you who have your cameras on, I appreciate that. For everybody else, please put your camera on. As I stated earlier, I don't want to lecture today. I would like to have an interactive class with everybody. So I do expect that from everybody. So a little bit about myself. Let's get started. My name's Rich Carpentieri. I've been with Keller Williams since 2008. I used to own my own small mom and pop brokerage. I merged it in back on September 24th, 2008. Became a team leader in Orlando, Florida. So I was a team leader for 6 years. I was a general manager for 4 years. I've been an OP for 3 years and a Bolt coach for 6.5. You say, well, how did you get all of that in 12 years? Because I always had more than one role in Keller Williams. And at one point, I was an OP, a general manager, and a Bolt coach at the same time. So I had 3 full-time jobs. And guys, I wasn't working 70 hours a week either. So anything could be done if you have systems and models, right? So, and that's the most important thing I want you to take away. Today's class, though, is how to structure a contract. Now, we have people from various states on today's call. I have ownership in 7 market centers in Florida. So we have some Florida people. In Florida, the agent doesn't write the contract. We fill in the blanks on a contract. The contracts are written by attorneys and real estate agents. It's called FAR. All we're allowed to do is fill in the blanks. I've got many people from New Jersey where it's an attorney state. Agents don't write contracts. We send it off to attorneys to do, right? So we have a combination of everybody. So 1 or 2 things I say may not be applicable to your state. So if you have a question, please ask me and I will drill down. We do have an attorney on the phone, on the line today with Nicole. So if there's anything that's a legal question, I may refer or defer to you to get some assistance if it is a legal question. Is that okay with you, Nicole?
That's okay. I may not have the answer because real estate at risk time is not my specialty.
That's
I
okay.
do divorces primarily. So if you have
That's
a divorce
okay.
question,
So I just wanted to start off. So what we're saying, how is everybody's market doing? If I can just get one or two people to tell me, how is the market where you are? Tell me what city, what state you're at. Tell me what's going on in the market. I'm overwhelmed with responses. Yes, Sherry.
Inverness, Florida, and the market is hot.
Yeah, so there's multiple offers.
Yes.
Shortage
Multiple
of
offers
inventory?
on every listing.
Yeah, and so there's a shortage of inventory, I'm assuming?
Yes.
What about in a different part of the country now? Who's from New
Shortage of
Jersey?
inventory also in New Jersey.
Okay, so there's a
Multiple offers, like
Okay.
central New Jersey especially and North Jersey.
Yeah, because in Florida, what we're seeing is probably about 25% of all offers are multiple offers. 25% here in Florida. So is that similar to where you are, Giselle?
Approximately, yes.
Okay, yeah, wonderful. And guys, here's what I could say. How many people think or believe that there's a shortage of inventory where their market is? Give me a thumbs up if you believe there's a shortage of inventory. Can I share a different perspective with everybody? Will that be allowed?
sure.
So what if I told you there's not a shortage of inventory, there's just a shortage of lead generators? See, if I'm looking from a different perspective, not everybody in the world knows that what their house is worth. They don't realize the appreciation we've had over the last 6 years is probably up, I don't know, 40%, 50%, 60%, depending where you're at over the last 6 years. And most people don't realize that. A lot of people went to sell their house years ago and they couldn't because they were underwater. And it's possible they were federal employees who were not allowed to do short sales. Right? So they held on to their houses. And now they don't realize they now have equity. Right? So never think that that there's a shortage. I'm giving you a different perspective. I don't see it. There's 2 months inventory where my market centers are in Florida. 2 months inventory. No, a balanced market is 6 months. And my agents keep saying there's a shortage of inventory. And I keep telling them, no, there is not. If everybody did their job and did 3 hours a day of lead generation, you'd have a ton more listings on the market. That's our fault, not the market's fault. So I'm just going to give a different perspective. So I want to speak about the mindset of what it takes to win in a multiple offer situation. So let's talk about that for a second. I wrote down a couple of notes. One of the things is when you're writing in a kind, I'd love to, no, guys, I will never make anybody look bad. This is the interactive part. I want people to shine in. Even if you're brand new, don't tell me you're brand new because I don't know you're brand new until you say that. And if you tell me you're brand new, that means you're telling everybody in the outside world you're brand new.
Uh-oh.
So I got two words of advice for those people. Stop it. Don't tell anybody you're brand new. We don't know that. Until you tell me, I don't know that. So what do you think an agent, so you're about to either write a contract or submit or negotiate and submit your offer to an attorney to write the contract, and you find out from the listing agent there's 3 other offers on there. That's not far-fetched today. And so what do you think the mindset is of the average agent who's going into multiple offer? What's going through their head? What do you think is, what is the average agent? Not us. We're all learning based here. But what is the average agent thinking?
Defeat.
Defeat. Am I going to get it? What else?
How can I write the best offer?
How can I write the best offer? Absolutely. What
How
else?
high can I go?
How high can I go? Right? So these are things.
What's the appraisal value, you know?
Here's another, absolutely. That's a big one, especially here in Florida, because we're not hitting on a lot of appraisals. So we're trying to structure the deal and get it as high, and we're worried about the appraisal. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that today. So those are some of the things that we're up against. Now, guys, the truth of the matter is a lot of the questions you asking yourself, do you believe that that's holding you back or holding the agent back, or that's moving them forward to write the contract?
Holding them back.
Yeah, there's a lot of times what you see, it starts with mindset. Before we even write the contract or submit to an attorney to write the contract, the challenges we're having is with our own mindset because we're not confident that we're going to win. right? And then this is what happens. We self-sabotage the deal. We don't do it intentionally. Our brain does that for us because we're not confident, we're not positive. And guys, when you follow a structured system, a model and a system, I promise you, you may not get 100% of all offers, and you will, I guarantee you, your percentage is gonna spike. When I was in production, this was back in 2004, 5, 6, when the market was on fire in Florida. We had multiple, it was just like this, pretty much 25, 30% of all offers were multiple offers. And in multiple offers, I would get about 80%, 85% of all my offers were approved. Why? I followed a system and a model, and we're going to talk about that today. Second question I have is, what expectations do you think real estate agents set with buyers before the showing? Do they even set any expectations? So Ryan's saying yes. I think that's Ryan. Yeah. So good for Ryan. Do you think, Ryan, that the average agent is setting expectations with buyers before they go out?
The average agent, no.
The average agent is not. They just, you know what happens is your phone rings and somebody wants to go see a house, or you lead generate and they say, yes, we want to see houses on Saturday. Most people get so excited they forget to do their job, right? Number one job is safety. Do you know who the person is on the phone? Do you know who the person is on the phone, guys? Now, this isn't it's not a gender thing. It's not a man or a woman thing, because I can't dodge bullets and neither could you. I don't know what the person's agenda is. So we need to set expectations. What is the market like? Leads me to the next question. What do you think the average agent is doing? Are they doing a buyer consultation prior to the first show? The average person? No. Now, again, that's a safety issue. You never meet the person for the first time at a house. That is a safety issue. Guys, I want to know everything about that person. And I've had agents say, well, they don't want to meet me at the office. Well, then here's why. In the absence of value, time and or money becomes an issue. I'll say it again. In the absence of value, time and or money becomes an issue. In other words, you're not giving them anything of value on the phone call for them to stop down and meet with you with. You've got to take a look in the mirror, right? Because when you're delivering value, they're going to meet you, whether it's in the office. I used to meet people in Dunkin' Donuts, McDonald's. It doesn't really matter. You meet them in a public place, a place where you're safe. And I'm going to spend, and I spent a buyer consultation is anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour. I'm going to find out everything about the person. And it's not the Spanish Inquisition style. It's not, you know, rapid fire question asking. What it actually is just basically I'm listening at a different level. And here's one of the challenges we have as buyers. Okay, when you're in a conversation, whether it's with your spouse, loved ones, or buyers or sellers, are you listening with the intent to understand, or are you listening with the intent to respond? What do you think most people, what is their listening skills? Is it to understand what the person's saying, or they just want to respond so they can move on to their next question? What do you think it is?
Respond.
First respond, yeah.
And this is the mindset part. Guys, regardless what our license says, salesperson, we have got to think of ourselves as consultants. There's a big difference between a salesperson and a consultant. A salesperson is what you see at the mall, and they're selling you whatever at the kiosk. That's a salesperson. The AT&T person, that's a salesman. We are not. Guys, you have got to sit down, ask questions, and listen. A consultant helps people make the best decision for them. A salesperson just breathes and reads commission breath. And don't think for a second that a customer can't sense when you have commission breath, right? So the last question I have before I go into all the things that we're going to do differently, and hopefully we're going to take notes so you can implement this in your strategy for writing better contracts or sending off better contracts to attorneys. So are you asking the co-broke before you negotiate, right? Can we agree there are many variables to negotiate on a contract? There's a lot of things, right?
Yep.
Yes. So how many of us are actually calling up the listing agent? Sherry, I'm going to role play with you. So Sherry's one of my team leaders. Sherry, I noticed that you have a listing at 123 Main Street, and I know that you told me earlier today that you have 3 other offers you'll be presenting at 5 o'clock today. Is there anything in particular? There's a lot of things to negotiate on a contract, and I look forward to doing business with you because I heard so many great things about you. Is there anything that's more important than the others? If you had to narrow it down to one thing that your client has to win on, what would that be? What's most important?
The amount in their pocket.
Okay, so price. So price is more important than escrow. It's more important than title. It's more important than repairs. It's more important than anything else we're about to negotiate. Is that right? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Beautiful. Let me get ahead with my buyer and let me sit down and ask some questions. I'll get back with you in an hour. Now, how many people are actually speaking to the co-broker to find out? Probably not many. Now, guys, that doesn't, so good for you, Mariana, that you're doing that. Great job. So now, guys, that is not illegal to do that. And I'm not an attorney. We do have one on the phone right now on the call with us. That is not illegal. And the person may choose not to answer that. And if done in a proper way, I will tell you that 90% of the time, the agent will tell you what's most important to the person. 90%, 9 out of 10 times, they're going to tell you what's most important. And now you can discuss that as a strategy and collaborate with your customer, with your buyer on how to structure a contract that creates a win-win situation. Is that not what we want to do at Keller Williams? Create a win-win. If the buyer feels like they got a great deal, the seller believes they got a lot of money, that makes for a great transaction. If the buyer feels they paid too much and the seller thinks they got ripped off, that makes for no referrals, right? So we want to create a scenario, and sometimes the co-broke isn't aware of how to do that because they don't have the coaching, the training, the education, or technology that we have at Keller Williams. So let's get into negotiables. Let's talk about the first thing. The first, these are common mistakes that I see. I'm broker of several offices, OP of several offices. So these are the common mistakes, and I'll tell you where the common complaints come in as a broker. For my brokerage is where the complaints come in. First is the closing date. Now, typically, ideally, you'd like to say 30 days. Now, on a VA or a USDA or an FHA loan, that may not be possible. I don't know. So they seem to be taking longer and longer because of appraisals. So you make, and the truth of the matter is, should you put out a closing date for 60 days in this market?
No.
Unless there's a specific reason where your buyer cannot, and this should come out in the buyer consultation, right? Because you're going to talk about closing date. All the things I'm going to address now are items you address in the buyer consultation. So you can, the time to discuss your offer is not when you're writing the offer. The time to discuss the offer is in the buyer consultation before you show them the house. Because once you show them the house, it's too late. Because as you're driving back to write the contract or submit that offer, depending on what state you're in, the wife and the husband or the significant others are collaborating and saying, I know that house was listed for $400,000. Do you think we can get it for $375,000? So if you haven't addressed price, the time to address price is not when they're ready to submit an offer. The time for you to address price is in the buyer consultation. The time to address closing period is in the buyer consultation, right? The second thing is title company. Now, every state is different. We have attorney states, we have title states. Florida's a title state. New Jersey's an attorney state. New York is an attorney state. So typically, and we have geographical areas, like in Florida, South Florida, the buyer chooses the title company. In Central or North Florida, the seller chooses the title company. Now, you may have that same scenario in New Jersey, New York, Kentucky, and Minnesota. We have people from like 5 different states on the call today. So you have got to figure out what is the norm for your area. Now, if you're going to say, you know what, we have a title company in-house, and I'm the buyer's agent, and it's customary for, in your area, for the seller to choose the title company, don't rock the boat. Don't force your title company in if it's customary that the other person normally chooses it in your area, right? Because some of you may own shares of stock in a title company and you're getting dividends. I got that. I own a title company too. I understand that. And the thing is this, if you don't get the contract executed, you don't have anything to hand to a title company, right? Use the airplane method. Does anybody know what the airplane method is? Airplane method says when pressure drops, oxygen comes down, who do you put the mask on first?
Yourself.
Yourself before your kids, right? Because if you black out, you can't help your kids. So the airplane method is, who do you help first, your title company or your own business?
My business.
Yourself. So structure that, make sure, so title company. Escrow. Now this is a real big one. Now in Florida, I'm going to say that our average price point is a lot lower than what you're accustomed to. So please don't laugh, because a lot of the people on this call are from Florida. So where Sherry's the team leader of in Citrus County, Inverness, the average price point is, Sherry?
We're at a little under 150.
Now, I know in New Jersey, look at Mariana's eyes. She was like, wow. So can we express gratitude if you're in New Jersey and your average price point is 600,000 or 550, whatever it is? So there's parts of the country that have an average price. So we have to sell a lot of real estate to make money in our areas, right? So escrow. So I see agents writing escrow or putting down on a contract for $1,000, and I scratch my head. Do you realize when you go to buy a car salesman is going to get more than $1,000 deposit? You're selling real estate, guys. Let's be real about this. So when I wrote contracts, when I was in production, I would ask for anywhere between 2 and 5% of the purchase price for escrow. So let me be clear. So back then, like, my average price point was about 300. I was in Orlando, different part of Florida. It was about 280 to 300. So if the person said it was FHA, back when I was writing contracts back then, it was 3%, not 3.5%. So if you were writing a contract for $300,000 and you were FHA, I wrote down escrow for $9,000, the whole kit and caboodle, right then and there. This way you didn't have to bring any money to close other than your closing costs. And here's why. Do people walk away from a $500 or $1,000 escrow? What do you think?
Mm-hmm.
Will people walk away from a $9,000 or a $10,000 escrow deposit?
No.
Less likely, less likely. Guys, remember this. I know how you, and here's how most agents are thinking. Well, I have to do what's in the best interest of my client. Well, again, there's laws in different states. In the state of Florida, we are transaction brokers. Our fiduciary is not to the buyer or the seller. It's to the transaction. Now, in New Jersey, New York, Kentucky, it may be different. I am not an attorney. So here's what I'm going to tell you. When a buyer comes and says, I need help, Mariana, I need help buying a house, and I want you to represent me. Here's what some agents think they heard. They think they heard, Mariana, please help me write a contract and put as many loopholes in the contract so if I have to cancel, I can get out of the contract. So do you understand? It's kind of like you're stepping on your own toes when you put loopholes in contracts, unless the buyer specifically asked for a contingency for a specific reason. Don't put them in there. If they're not asking for that, don't put it in, guys. And escrow is one of those things. You're asking for $1,000, they're saying, okay. Ask for $5,000, ask for $10,000. If it's a cash deal, I would ask for 10% at the signing of the contract and 10% after the inspection. Additional escrow. Why? Nobody walks away from $60,000 on a cash deal. I would tie the person to the deal. You asked me to sell you a house. My job is to sell you a house. You're going to choose the house. I'm going to do everything I can to negotiate the best possible deal. And once we get past all the contingencies like appraisal, inspection, and all of that, we're going to close. Right? Because do people get cold feet and change their minds?
Yes.
Yeah. So guys, escrow, you need bigger escrow deposits. Next, pre-approval versus pre-qualifying. Now, this is a big one. Some of you think it's one and the same. It is not. So pre-approval means there are no stipulations. Pre-qualified means I went online, I gave somebody my name, and they sent me a letter that says I'm pre-approved. Guys, you can throw that piece of paper in the garbage. That's where it gets filed. It means nothing. They have not verified employment. They have not verified income. They have not verified, they've done none of that. A pre-approval means they've verified your employment, your income, your credit, or you verified your address. Everything is approved. The only thing they need to close the file is an appraisal, right? An appraisal, what they need, and possibly a survey. They are good to go. So if you go to Desktop Underwriter, if your bank has Desktop Underwriter, it's going to be like FHA. They submit this, it comes back with a loan number, a commitment number. That means it's as good as cash. Now, do you think your negotiating is stronger if you're a cash buyer or if you're a person with a pre-qualified? Which one?
Cash.
Yeah.
Cash.
So if you've got Desktop Underwriter and it's an actual pre-approval, everything's been done. They give you a loan number, commitment number. Guys, that's as good as cash. So why wouldn't we structure the deal to benefit the person before you show them the first house? See, this is all done in the buyer consultation. And you explain the benefit. The benefit isn't for me. The benefit isn't so I work less. The benefit is that I get you a better deal. And in today's market, it doesn't mean taking a $400,000 house and getting it for $380,000. It means taking a $400,000 house that might sell for $415,000, and we can maybe get it for $405,000.
Hey, I have a quick question.
Sure.
I'm in New York, by the way. And so forget pre-approval versus pre-qualification. Most of our people are coming in with pre-approvals or cash. Do you have any suggestions or advice on how to win versus a cash offer? Because a lot of times we get beat out. The people that have to get a mortgage get beat out by people that just have cold, hard cash to pay.
So cash is king, right? Cash
No.
is king. There's no doubt about that. So there are times you've got to make sure that every single one of these 15 or 16 items I'm going to go through with you is on point. You've nailed it, because if you're pre-approved and conventional at 80%, right, which is great, still cash is better. So let's say a cash offer is for $400,000 and $1,000 escrow. And let's say your offer on an 80-20 conventional loan, which is pre-approved, you're ready to go, is at $402,000 and you've got $20,000 down. Which offer is screaming, I want to buy your house?
Conventional.
So I'm just saying the way you structure the negotiations or contract, depending on what state you're in, will determine who's going to get that deal. You already know you're at a disadvantage if you're not cash. Even if it's pre-approved, because cash is king, then pre-approval conventional. And we're going to get to the financing clause, so I'll save that and share my thoughts about financing. So make sure pre-approved. If you're cash, you must have proof of income. Must have proof of income. Let me say it again. Must have proof of income. I can't tell you how many times the agent says, they tell one of my agents, oh no, they're good. They're attorneys, they're doctors, they're investors. I don't care if you're the mayor of the city. I don't care if you're the president of the United States. If you don't send me proof of income, right, we got a problem. I don't care who you are. We got a problem. Now, on that proof of income, it must have the person's name and the amount of the money. If they'd like to black out the account number, I'm okay with that. I don't need your account number. So let's say that it shows that I've got $350,000 in a bank account and my offer is for $375,000 and it's a cash deal. Well, that doesn't work for me. It's not $350,000 is not where is the other 25 coming from? Well, that's in a different account. Great, then I need that account also. I need proof of funds for that account. See, the proof of funds have to be for at least the amount of the offer. And they can well, my customer doesn't want to send the account information. They can black out. I'll speak, and guys, this is again on a listing side. If I'm the listing agent, I'm having this conversation when I list the house. If we get an offer, if I'm the listing agent, if we get an offer that's going to be cash, from my experience, there are people out there that are misleading. They just don't know. Maybe they flat out lie. I don't know. But unless I see the money or proof of the funds, I don't consider that a cash deal. I don't take like paper. So what is your feeling, Mr. and Mrs. Seller? And they say, oh, no, we want to see it. So from my experience, you have a higher chance to get to the closing table. That is what you want, right? So as the listing agent, I want to see that. As the buyer's agent, we're not even submitting an offer until I can prove the amount if it's cash. Is everybody clear with the cash? Proof of funds. Next on there, time of acceptance. So now, guys, you don't want to make it too short. And this is a kind of one of those things you're looking for the sweet spot. You don't want to make it too long. So if you're making it less than 24 hours, you could be squeezing the seller or the listing agent, and it just may not be possible. There are a lot of investors, people that are away, people that are working. It may not be possible to get you put them an offer in at 2 o'clock and have an answer by 6, right? You've got to at least give them 24 hours. Now, on the other hand, you don't want to give them 4 days, because by then I can guarantee you if it is a multiple offer, it will be a multiple offer situation. So you've got to find that sweet spot and ask the listing agent, guys, this is where we collaborate. This is where we have questions. I'm going to go through all of your questions at the end. I see there's a lot of questions popping up. I promise we'll answer each and every one of them. You've got to collaborate with your co-broker to find out exactly where they stand, right? So make sure that you're in dialogue with the co-broker. When it comes to time of acceptance, is it realistic for 24 hours? Is your seller on vacation? Ask those type of questions. It goes a long way. The next thing is occupancy. Be careful. This is a big complaint issue. Big complaint with my agents. So there's a thing called pre-occupancy and there's something called post-occupancy. Pre-occupancy happens when you ask to have the buyer move in before the closing date. I highly, highly, highly recommend you do not do this. There's many reasons. There's only one thing that can go right. There's 1,000 things that can go wrong. And the most common one is the buyer falls out of love with the house before closing date. They realize that the pipes make noise, they rattle, they realize that the heat doesn't work, the air conditioner doesn't work the way they thought it would. There's a million things they can fall out of love with. You will kill the deal. You will kill the deal. So be careful on the pre-occupancy, right? So, and the second thing is, if you do a pre-occupancy, and I'm telling you I would not do anything else, that has got to be the absolute last resort, there must be a security deposit in rent. So if the buyer is looking to move in early, if they were to rent an apartment or rent a house, would they not have security deposit and pay for those days? So those are two different things. There must be security deposit and they must be prorationed on rent on a pre-occupancy. On the post-occupancy means the seller stays after the closing date. I highly recommend not to do this also. You're going to get a ton of complaints, and I promise you when something goes wrong, who do buyers and sellers who do they always blame? Us, the real estate agent. You're going to get the blame whether you were wrong or not. So with the post-occupancy, let's say I'm the seller and I'm building a house, new construction, and my builder tells me the house will be available November 1st. Do builders lie? Just a little bit. Do builders make mistakes when their foreman tells them, oh yeah, no problem, we'll be done on the 1st of the month? I can't tell. More often than not, that they're wrong than they're right. I just finished building a house. The person told me it would take 2 years in St. Augustine. 4 years to build.
Oh my God.
4 years. Do you think I was happy about that? And they'll have a million excuses. So if the seller can't move into their new construction, what do they automatically think it's okay to do?
Stay in their house.
They say, this is my house. Well, no, it's not. They don't own it anymore. Problem is this. They don't want to move. Now you got to make it illegal. Now we've got to get Nicole on the phone because Nicole's an attorney to draw up some papers. By the time we get into court, an extra 2 weeks goes by. Guess what? They're already out. Now, who's been inconvenienced for those 2 weeks? Who's been living in a hotel? Who's had to store their furniture? Now, all of a sudden, the buyer comes back to you and blames you. Well, you were the one that said to do this. So there's a lot of lawsuits around this. As the broker, I get these complaints all the time, and I tell my agents, no pre-occupancy, no post-occupancy. And if it's the only way to make the deal fly, get me on the phone. Let me structure it. Does that make sense? Okay, we're gonna move on. Financing. Now, guys, first of all, if there's anybody who's served our country in any of our armed forces, I want to say thank you, thank you, thank you from the bottom of my heart, because you've done something I've never done. You've put your life at risk for everybody and people you don't even know. I've never done that. So I don't want anybody to take this the wrong way. Any loan with the letter A in it is not a good loan. Does everybody hear that? So if you have a VA loan, not a good loan. You have an FHA loan, not a good loan. You have a USDA loan, not a good loan. I'm just giving you my opinion. There's nothing wrong with the person, it's the product that's bad. So I want to be clear. It's not the veteran that's bad, it's the loan, the product the government gives you. Well, you say, well, it's 100% financing. Okay, so you're thinking from the buyer's point of view. What's the benefit to the seller? Oh, I got it. The seller has to pay part of the buyer's closing costs. That's a benefit to the seller? Oh, the appraisal, if it doesn't appraise, that appraisal's stuck on the house for 6 more months. Everybody that goes to that house, if you don't put the deal together, you're stuck with a bad appraisal for 6 months. Is that a benefit to the seller? From the seller's perspective, all of these loans are bad products. It doesn't make the person bad. Does everybody understand the difference? The product is bad. So if we had to structure and we rank these, and I think Mariana asked this question or alluded to this earlier, cash is king, right? That's your strongest offer. The next is a pre-approval conventional loan. That's your next best product, right? Then it's going to be an FHA loan. That's the next best product. Then you have VA, not so good of a product, and then it's USDA for agricultural, for areas that were zoned agricultural. Now, if you look at it, and I don't have the data, but I'm going to take a stab in the dark and give you my opinion because my organization closes roughly 7,000 houses a year. So I'm thinking that's a pretty good base to make this statement. So when you have cash, my guess is 95% of the time the deal's going to close, maybe even higher, right? When you have a pre-approved conventional loan, you're probably looking at about 85 to 90% of the time, because there could still be appraisal issues and inspection issues, right? Maybe 85 to 90% of the time we're going to close. When you go to FHA, you're probably looking at 80%. When you go to VA, you're probably 70 to 75%, and USDA is 50 to 60%. Now, if I'm an agent in a transaction, do I want to make sure the percentage is as high as possible to get to the closing table or as low as possible? So use better products. It's not the people. And when you explain it to your people, make sure you explain it properly. You know, because if you're speaking to a veteran and you say, well, the VA is bad, it's no good. They're like, why would I want to work with this agent? I've served my country. I've risked my life. I've seen people die. And this person over here is telling me this isn't good. It's not the individual, it's the product. The government needs to get their act together and give our veterans a product that's beneficial for the buyer and the seller. There should be some incentive for the seller to want, so make people want to sell to veterans as opposed to, I don't like that product. Does that make sense? So understand the financing that you're using and bringing forward. Explain this to your customers that, you know, cash is king, conventional, pre-approved is next, FHA, VA, USDA. So if you got a USDA, you're working at a disadvantage.
What makes,
offer.
I have a question.
Sure.
What makes those loans no good?
They're harder. They take longer to close and they're harder to close. There's more guidelines, there's standards. So there's standards on VA, FHA, and USDA loans that are not applicable to conventional loans. So it could be a handrail going up the staircase. That won't pass. If there's no handrail, that won't pass any of the, on the appraisal. The appraisal on an FHA, VA, or USDA will fail. certain things, stairs, windows, different things will make it fail on a conventional where it won't. And if it's a condition, so like wood rot may not be a condition. I'm choosing my words carefully. Wood rot, WDO, wood rot, wood destroying organisms may not be a condition of a mortgage if it's a pre-approved conventional loan. Now, if it's FHA and you have wood rot, the appraiser is going to come in and say it's failed. Until the wood rot is fixed, we can't close this loan. Now, if it has to be fixed prior to the closing, the buyer can't fix it. They don't own the house. Now you're asking the seller to fix it. We're going to get into repairs, in my opinion, on repairs also. So does everybody understand the financing? It's not the person, it's the product that's not that good. They don't get to the closing table as often. And if I'm the listing agent, if I've got a cash offer and a USDA, it's a no-brainer. Right? If you've got a conventional and a VA and the person's pre-approved with 20% down and they got a $20,000 escrow deposit, there's a no-brainer. Right?
Eric?
Yes.
So quick question for you. So a lot of the loans in Connecticut are more FHA because of the first-time home buyers, and so we have a lot of home buyers, first-time home buyers over here who cannot go conventional. So how do we win with FHA? I've used time, in terms of to figure. If the seller needs more time to close, if they need less time, I've done the, max out my 3.5%. I try not to use seller concessions if at all possible. But how else can I win? What can give me the edge over, let's say, someone with a conventional? What can make me a little bit more convincing?
Sure. So Damone, right now you're my favorite because that's the best question. So far you're my favorite. You got the trophy. Now somebody may steal it from you. Right now you're my favorite. So first I would have the explanation at the buyer consultation when they're telling me they're pre-approved on an FHA to see if they would qualify as a conventional, because a conventional loan is stronger than an FHA. Right? So that means we may have to get the loan officer or the mortgage broker on the phone in the consultation to see if that's possible. So I can structure the transaction to have a higher percentage to get to the closing table, to get accepted, and then to close. That's the first thing. The second, let's say it's the only way they can do the deal is FHA, because that's a possibility. So you have to work with what's given to you, right? And if you're about to enter, if it's FHA, and it's lower end in Connecticut, my guess is lower end to you would be 300,000, 350,000,
Yes.
right? So those houses are flying off the shelves.
Yes.
That's a low end in your area. So how would you make it better? You had better structure the contract, do everything I'm telling you, and the only thing that may not be in your favor is the fact that it's FHA. Big escrow deposit, short turnaround time for execution, no repairs, no contingencies. Let them choose title. All of these things come into play. You've got to nail every one of these items I'm going over. And then hopefully the FHA won't stand in the way. You have FHA and you have 3.5% down on a $300,000 house and the escrow is 10.5. The whole 3.5%, I'm screaming, hey, I want that house, Damone.
Mm-hmm.
Don't ask for $1,000, get the whole 10.5.
Right.
Yep. So Ryan, you're up.
I was just more going to say, I think also a good way that can help you win in those types of situations is to build relationships with agents in that area that are listing those homes, because that alone can actually make or break a deal.
Absolutely, guys. That's absolutely 100%. So if you've been around in real estate, you should be building relationships with your co-brokes. If you're new to real estate, you should be looking to build relationships with every one of your co-brokers, right? So we are in a relationship-based business, not transactional. Don't make it transactional. Build relationships with customers and co-brokers. Love that, Ryan. Next
Hey,
point.
Rich.
Yeah.
It's Sherry. I just have a suggestion that I've seen coming back a lot is agents are having their buyers write a letter to the sellers again, and it is helping.
Say that one more time, Sherry.
We have communication issues here, but the buyers are writing letters to the sellers, and it's really helping.
So this is, I heard for the first time a MAPS coach who does $80 million a year on a mega team say this about 4 years ago. And she said that's how she was having some of her buyers from her buyer's agents either write letters or do 60-second videos, why that house should go to them. Very powerful, very powerful. So you've got to make sure they keep it short and sweet and don't say anything legal in that video or letter. Just keep it to what that means to their family, the value it will bring. Absolutely. So Jesse said over here, proof of funds should be a letter from the bank, not a bank statement. This is advice from the attorney. So I'm not going to ever argue with an attorney. So I think that a bank statement would be good. I think a letter would be better. According to what Jesse's saying. So I love that. Thank you. Ann said proof of income or proof of funds. So proof of income would to be get an approval to get you pre-approved. Proof of funds is for a cash offer. Those are two different things. Proof of income is where the bank checks to make sure you make as much money as you say you do, right? Because there are times when people say, well, I own my own business. I'm a plumber. I make $250,000 a year. And their tax return says they made $27,000. Because it's an all cash business, right? So proof of income is what a bank does to see if they approve you in underwriting. Proof of funds says you have enough cash to bring to the closing table whatever you're supposed to. Those are two different things. How do you feel about waiving inspections? If I am the buyer's agent, I'm not feeling good about that because if something's wrong with the house, they're going to blame you. They're going to blame us. So I do recommend as the buyer's agent to not, if the person's a general contractor and they're comfortable doing it themselves, I still would recommend them to get an inspection. If they choose not to, because sometimes buyers don't listen to us, then I would ask them to write me a short letter or email saying that they understand that I recommended that they should have a home inspection and a WDO and they're waiving that right. So this way, if something does go wrong later on, it's called cover your own butt, right? CYB, cover your butt. So if they don't want to come back and sue me and say, well, you didn't tell me to get a home inspection. So hopefully that helps you. Ian, you said, do they make mouthwash for commission breath? Yeah, they do. It means tell the truth and put the customer before yourself. That's the mouthwash. Love that. Yeah, commission breath is when we make it all about the commission. And guys, you know what that feels like, right? When you walk in a furniture store and the person addresses you at the front door, you know, they say, how can I help you? That's a script. And you say, no, I'm just looking. That's a script, right? It's not about the relationship. It's about the commission, and you know it, and we know it. So if you're addressing people, make sure that you're addressing them properly and make sure it's truly about the person. You know, I once heard one of the other bowl coaches say this to somebody in a very polite and loving fashion to somebody they knew. They said, when are you going to make real estate about the customer as opposed to yourself? Right? So and here's something else I'm just going to bring up. I always like to go through this when I'm in bold class. So how many people, I'm going to ask some silly questions that I already know the answers to. I've got to get you to say the answers so you can hear the answers. Is that okay? How many people by a show of hands have ever bought furniture before? Raise your hand. Yeah, see, I knew the answer was going to be. So I'm just going to ask, who would like to just role play this with me? It's going to be fun. I promise you won't look bad. I promise you're not going to look bad. So we've got, Marina would like to answer this question with me. So Marina, you're up. So I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. So can you name the first and last name of the person who sold you furniture? No, you can't. Why can't you name the first and last name of the person who sold you the furniture?
It's very impersonal.
They didn't make it personal. So after you took delivery of the furniture, did they ever call you? No. So if they never called you, was that sale about the relationship with your family or was it about the commission they earned on that? It was about the commission. Now, when you don't call your customers after closing, now you know what your customers are saying about you. Did everybody just get that?
Yes.
You need not, that wasn't meant towards Maria. I'm just saying you've got to be in a relationship with your people before, during, and after the transaction in order to build a business worth owning, right? A career worth having and a life worth living, right? So that's commission breath. And I'm not saying I know Marina calls all her people up. I'm just giving an example. Used car salesman, furniture salesman, cell phone salesman. It's about the transaction. Real estate, make it about the relationship. So the best way to make that mouthwash is make it a relationship business, not transactional. Hopefully that helps out. Let me clear out some more of the questions and then I'll continue with my list. Buyer consult via Zoom. Can you record the conversation to refer back in case you missed something? So I am not an attorney. I've said that 3 or 4 times. I'm hoping you guys take this away. Always tell people multiple times you're not an attorney. Every state has different laws about recording. In the state of Florida, you must notify the person. You must notify the person. So if you're going to, I would just say to I think that was Ryan. Ryan, I would just say, so Ryan, today's session, I'm going to record only for the purpose that I can refer back so I can better serve you so you can have the best possible experience and give me great reviews, 5-star reviews after the transaction. Is that okay with you? See, I'm going to always make it about the individual. I think you need to get that. You need to get permission. I always would recommend that. Even if your state says no, just so there's no ambiguity, I'd always ask for permission and let them know. Chester, New Jersey's houses are selling fast, correctly priced. Yep, that's all over. Up to camera, I think we're pretty good there. We got a couple new ones here. Regarding inspections, we've had buyers say they will pay the first blank of the inspection issues. So Karen, can you give me clarity? Are you talking about repairs? Can you just unmute yourself, Karen?
Yes. Yeah, we're talking about repairs. They would say like, we'll pay the first $1,500 of inspection issue repairs.
Okay, so I've got a different opinion on that. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
I'm asking for permission. I want to see if you guys are open-minded. So it is of my opinion, that you never ask for repairs. And here's why. It's going to be a lawsuit. I get this all the time. My agents don't always listen to what I recommend, so I'll leave it up to you. I'm going to just give you my opinion from a broker's point of view. So when you negotiate a transaction with a person, first of all, if you put in the state of Florida, if you leave it blank, I think it's 1.5% of the sales price for repairs. If you don't fill in the state of Florida, you have to fill in blanks. We don't write contracts. Attorney writes the contracts, they leave blanks, we fill it in. If you leave something blank, there's always a standard that it'll go to. So if you don't fill that in the state of Florida, it automatically is repairs for 1.5% unless you use an as-is contract. I highly recommend an as-is contract. Okay, and that doesn't mean you can't get repairs. You still can, even though it's as is, and I'll explain that to you later. So when you have a contract that's been executed, and most people don't get this right, executed contract does not mean it's signed by all parties. An executed contract means it's signed by all parties and it's delivered back to the first person who signed it, or an agent thereof. Now, I'm not an attorney. I'm going to say it again. So that means you can have everybody sign a contract. If it's never been sent back to the party or the agent, it's not executed, right? So, so we have a meeting of the minds. We're under contract. It's executed. Now there's some repairs. There's a roof repair. So we need a whole new roof. The roof's $12,000. I'm just making up numbers, guys. So now, the buyer is buying their castle. This is their dream come home true. This is where they're going to have their 2.3 children. They're going to have a dog named Spot, a white picket fence, whatever that looks like. So does the buyer want the seller to spend the most amount of money to fix that roof or the least amount of money?
The most.
Most. Now you're the seller, and the seller's saying, oh my God, this is eating away. It's going to take away from this. 60-day cruise around the world, our next house, the down payment for our next house, our retirement fund. Does the seller want to pay the most amount of money or the least amount of money?
The least.
When it comes to repairs, you've just learned that you will never have a meeting of the minds ever. Because even though we explain it to them, they're selective hearing, right? They have selective, it's like children. Children only hear what they want to hear. They don't hear anything outside the lines. And now all of a sudden they think that they can repair the roofs themselves. So they don't permit it. They do a half junky job, right? And now the buyer looks at it after it's done. Now the seller probably spent $8,000 as opposed to $12,000. And the buyer says, no, I want you to do it again. This isn't right. There's no permit. Now, do you think the seller's about to spend $12,000 to do it the right way after they spent $8,000?
No.
Understand why? So guys, so my thing is this. It's so much, unless the repair is a condition of mortgage. Let me say it again. Unless the repair is a condition of mortgage, negotiate a settlement. So in other words, if the roof is not a condition of closing for the mortgage, and you get 3 estimates and you agree there's a $9,000, a $10,000, and a $12,000, and buyer and seller agree on the one in the middle of $10,000, let's just take that contract from $400,000 and we give them a $10,000 credit, and now it's $390. We're not going to touch the roof. Now the buyer can't say that the seller used the wrong contractor, or it was a junky job, it was a bad repair. Guys, you want to set the transaction up to close. Just subtract it, let the buyer choose the contractor after closing, and let them do it. Now, sometimes that's not possible. Sometimes you may see like WDO as a condition to close. So you might have to fix some things prior to closing. If it's not absolutely mandatory, my advice is never fix anything. Negotiate a settlement. How much would it cost? Get buyer and seller to agree on it, and then give a credit in that amount. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yep. Yes.
How many times I say this? I've got a bunch of my agents on there. Because whenever there's a repair, I can guarantee you there's going to be a complaint. The seller's never happy the way the buyer's never happy the way the seller fixed it. There's not a meeting of the minds. And then the buyer complains and says, I'm not going to closing. And then the seller says, well, by the guidelines of the contract, I was supposed to pay whatever X amount of dollars. I paid that, I fixed it. And now you don't have a closing. If you don't have a closing, you don't have a happy customer. And if you don't have a happy customer, you don't get a 5-star review. And if you don't get a 5-star review, you don't get referrals. See, now you're seeing how this thing we call real estate really works. It's not about the commission. It's about making people happy. So does everybody understand about repairs? Unless it's absolutely mandatory, a part of the condition of close with the mortgage, avoid repairs. Put it on the buyer. Give them a credit. Negotiate a credit. How much do you think that'll cost? The buyer says, well, I want new plumbing. It's polybutyrol plumbing. Great. Let's get a plumber in here and find out how much it's going to cost to replace all these bad pipes. Twyla, if you can just mute yourself until you're ready to speak. Yeah, I'll mute you. Just because it's just conflicting with everybody on the line. Thank you. So does that make sense to everybody about the repairs? Unless it's a condition where they won't close unless it's fixed, negotiate a reduction in price that's acceptable to all parties, and let the buyer fix it post-close. So we've done seller closing assistance. Guys, now I know there's people, mortgage brokers are out there, 10 loan officers are out there saying, oh, listen, you can get a house, we can get you 6% closing costs, 3% closing costs. Now guys, if you're in a multiple offer and you have 2 contracts at $300,000 and one says they want 3% back in closing costs and the other one wants none back, the difference on those 2 contracts is $9,000. So now the wrong time to address this is when you're writing the contract or preparing the offer for the attorney. The right time to have that conversation is in the buyer consultation before you've even showed them a house. See, I'm going to give them my expectations and set my standards about closing. Now, if the person absolutely needs closing assistance, funds, they need the money to go to the closing table, do you think it's possible you can call up their mortgage broker in the buyer consultation and ask them if they will give them a buyer's rebate? In other words, if the interest rates are, let's say, 2 3/4%, if they raise the rate to 3%, how much would they give back so the buyer has money to close? All of the banks will do that for you. Speak to your mortgage broker. For a higher interest rate, they'll give them a credit at closing. That credit can be used to close. So instead of coming from the seller, it's coming from the bank, which is actually coming from the buyer because they're paying a higher rate. Don't complicate the transaction and make it unattractive to the seller. Make the contract attractive to the seller. So now's not the time to ask for seller assistance for closing costs for your buyer. Find it another way. Get it from the mortgage. Get it from the bank. Now, when we were in 2008, and I'm selling real estate, I had a mega team back then. When there was, in Orlando, we had 28,000 listings in Orlando, and our whole board was only selling 1,000 houses a month. We had a 28-month supply of inventory, as opposed to in Orlando now we have a 2-month supply, probably similar to what you have. Everyone was asking for seller assistance, and that's what you had to do if you wanted a buyer to choose your house. That was the market of the moment. Well, the market of this moment is no seller assistance, because the seller is just going to sell. If it's priced appropriately, the seller is going to just take someone else's offer. Does that make sense with everybody? Structure the contract to close. And this is all in the consultation. Next, home warranties. Just don't ask for them, guys. It's an extra $450 out of the seller's pocket. And right now, the seller's got the upper hand. So stop writing contracts with asking for home warranties. When the buyer asks for it, make sure you cover it in the buyer consultation. We're going to structure the contract. These are all the points you should be going over and explaining the way I'm explaining it to you. Now, and the way you do it is you say, Sherry, so if you were the seller, you're my buyer, I'm going to ask you to think like a seller. If you had multiple offers coming in and 3 of them did not have a home warranty and they were all for the same price, and one comes in asking for a $500 warranty, which one are you going to shy away from if you're the seller?
I'm going to shy away from the ones asking for the home warranty.
See, I'm asking my buyers in advance of writing the contract to think like a seller so they can get their contract to go through. That's why you do this. All of this is in the buyer consultation. None of this is done the day you're putting the offer together. It's too late at that point. Next, we covered repair. Furniture. This is real big in Florida because, especially by Disney, we have a lot of short-term rentals that are fully furnished. So there's several issues with furniture. 1, furniture is not real estate. Furniture is not real estate. I'm not an attorney, and I'm going to be bold enough to tell you, furniture is not real estate. Nicole, am I doing good with that so far?
You are absolutely correct.
Okay. So when you sell furniture, who pays the sales tax? See, these are things you're not thinking about as the broker am. Sales tax have to be paid. So now you have to have somebody appraise the furniture to find out how much it's worth so someone can pay tax on it. Now, when you go to buy furniture in a store, the buyer typically pays the tax. Well, the buyer would say, well, I don't want to pay the tax on that. The seller feels, why would I pay the tax? I'm selling the furniture. So guys, stay away from furniture. I've seen more deals collapse because of furniture. Person loves the bedroom set. They say, oh my God, that's such a beautiful bedroom set. Oh, the seller says, we'd love to sell it. Give us $1,000 and we'll sell it. Guys, first of all, buyer and seller should never be in the same room at the same time, ever. Do not let buyer speak to seller, because before you know it, they will cut both agents out and they'll make their own deal. And then when it goes to the closing table and it's going into the toilet, your deal, you're saying, how did this happen? It's because the agents allowed buyer and seller to communicate directly. I don't care if the buyer and seller are aunt and niece. My instructions to the niece who's buying the aunt's house says, and so Sherry, I'm going to pick on you. Sherry, I know that you love your Aunt Mary Ann over there, and I'm going to ask you to respect my expectation. For the next 30 days until we close, I'm going to ask you to have absolutely no contact with your aunt prior to closing. Now, the moment we close, you can hug and kiss, you can have spitball fights. I don't care what you do. We're not going to have any communication because everything you say will be used against you in negotiating. If I'm correct, when we did our buyer consultation, you told me you would like to buy a house and get the most amount of value for the least amount of money in the shortest amount of time with the least amount of headaches. Is that still the same?
Absolutely.
Okay, so do I have your word there'll be no contact between you and your aunt until after closing? See, guys, I set expectations. So this way I can get to the closing table. I structure the deal to close. These are conversations. Don't confuse them with confrontations. If you don't set the expectation, before it happens so fast that your deal implodes and you don't even know what happened. So furniture, if you can, don't put it in the deal. Family members. Next, square footage. Stop quoting square footage. Stop. These are all the complaints. It's so easy for me to see where the deal goes wrong. So now here, I'm going to say something. I'll give you an example and then I'll repeat the statement. Never be the source, always be the resource. Write this down. Grab a pen. Remember, I can see you. Never be the source, always be the resource. Here's what I mean by that. There's two different ways you can handle this. Somebody, my customer asked me and says, Rich, what's the square footage? I look on the MLS sheet and I say, so Mariana, there's actually 2,436 square feet. I'm the source of the information. I told you that. Doesn't matter where I got it. Now, Mariana asked me again, what's the square footage of the house? And I say, according to the MLS, with Sherry as the listing agent, Sherry put down the square footage of the house. Now I'm the resource. I'm going to help you get the answer, but the answer didn't come through me. I'm quoting the source where it came from. Don't be the source of information, be the resource. Point people in the right direction. And here's why people do this. Well, here's why everybody wants to be the source. Because when you tell people, it makes us look smarter. That's ego. We want people to think we are so darn smart, and we keep shooting ourselves in the foot. Is that making sense, guys? Don't be the source. Quote the source. When a person says, I want to know if there's any sexual predators living in, never answer yes or no. You would say, so Brian, I'd like you to go to www.blah, to research that. I'm not allowed to give you that answer according to my broker because that could be a liability. So please let me know if that's a problem or if you have any questions. I'm the resource. I'm not the source. Stop looking to be the smartest person in the room. The smartest person in the room is the person who does the least amount of talking. Everybody get that point? Okay, we're going to move on. Next, don't change verbiage on the contract. Now, again, in New Jersey, and I think Connecticut too is an attorney state where you send it out for attorneys to write contract. So you don't have this issue. In Florida, we actually have agents crossing out. Well, my customer said to cross it out. Let me just tell you what happens in the state of Florida. The moment an agent puts a line through a pre-printed contract by the FAR Bar Association, you have now practiced law. In this state, that is a felony in the state of Florida. It's called the Unlicensed Practice of Law, UPL. It's a violation, statute 475, felony. You're getting arrested. You don't put lines through anything. I don't care what your customer told you to do. If your customer said, I don't have a deposit for escrow, if you rob the bank for me, I'll have an escrow. Would you do that? No. Don't listen to the customer. They're not licensed. We're the experts. And we're not attorneys, unless your name is Nicole. Now, Nicole can do that. She can put a line through it because she is the licensed attorney. Unless you're a licensed attorney by the bar, you may not do that. At least not in the state of Florida. That is the unlicensed practice of law. That's a felony. So I'm going to keep you out. Last thing on my list is contingencies. Keep them as little as possible. Again, you've got to tell the buyer, if you want to buy a house today or tomorrow, I want you to understand what the market's like today. So I want you to look at from their perspective, from the seller's perspective, because they don't have to choose or negotiate with you when there's multiple offers. And right now, I just read in Florida, 17% of all houses are selling for more than the asking price. 17% of all contracts that were accepted in the month of September were over the asking price. So if that's the case, so you've got to put them in that position and ask the buyer to think like a seller in order to buy. And when you're the listing agent, you've got to ask the seller to think like a buyer if they want to sell. You've got to change their perspective. So guys, we've covered a lot of information. Let me see if we have any questions here. So would you write a new contract? Would I write a new contract? I'm sorry, Simona. If what? I'm not sure what that was pertaining to. I didn't see when you...
That was the last point you were talking about not crossing anything out in contracts. So if there's some kind of a change, you just rewrite a new contract?
Okay, so if my customer, my buyer wanted something deleted from a contract, I would say, Simona, that would be great, only that's a felony in this state. We're gonna have to hire an attorney to do that. I know a great one over there in New Jersey. Her name is Nicole. So I'm gonna get her on the phone and you're gonna be responsible to pay Nicole because this is your purchase, not mine. So you have bring your best deflector shield up because I don't change contracts. Agents don't change contracts, only attorney. Now, all of a sudden the buyer's thinking, well, maybe that oily wasn't that important of a point. Maybe we'll just leave that be. Because an agent may not do that, Simona. I don't write a new contract. I don't write contracts. Agents in Florida fill in blanks. Agents in New Jersey take all the negotiating points and give it to the attorney to draw the contract. If there's a special clause, it would be easier since you're getting an attorney anyway. If you're in New Jersey or Connecticut, it would just be easy. Tell the attorney what the clause is that you want to change. If it's customary and they want something unusual, the attorney will put it in there. But we as agents cannot unless you're a licensed attorney. Am I correct in saying that, Nicole? I just want to verify.
Yes, you are in fact correct. Although I don't work in New Jersey, so don't come to me in New Jersey because then I will be practicing.
What state are you in, Nicole?
I'm in Florida.
Okay, you're in Florida. Okay, good. So I'm just want to make sure that I've got clarity with everybody. Lori said, thank you, Rich. It's such great information. Sorry I had to leave. I have an appointment. Go get that listing, Lori. Hope you get that. So what questions, now I'm going to just open this up for anybody to see what questions you have. So take yourself off mute and you can ask me anything you'd like. I am once again overwhelmed with questions.
I have a question, Larry.
Sure.
On the listing agreement, we have a broker's disclosure, and I've had a little trouble explaining to a listing or a buyer about 295. Can you define that a little better for me?
Okay, so that's going to be a legal determination, Larry. I will take offline with you gladly. I don't know that this is the actual venue for that. What we have in one of our brokers, we have an additional commission, which is optional for the agents. It is not called a transaction fee, which might be construed as illegal. So it's additional brokerage fee, and that's something I'll discuss with you, or you can discuss with Sherry in person to help you with that verbiage on that.
All right.
You're welcome.
I have a question.
Sure, go ahead.
So I deal a lot with new builds, and as you know, a lot of times it's extended. So generally, I usually get an extension, to because most of the time they need an extension. I haven't had an issue yet, but you're saying that there could be big issues.
An extension is different than a pre or post amendment, a post occupancy. What I spoke about was pre and post occupancy. Are you talking about just an extension on a contract?
An extension for the house to be completed. I mean, that generally happens in most.
Yeah, that's different than what I was speaking about. What I was talking about pre and post occupancy, who's living in the house. If the house hasn't been built with the builder, you're going to have to get an extension. Otherwise, somebody's in default. If the house goes out of contract, then you're going to have to. It becomes a legal issue where you get attorneys in to fight. Does the person have to close, and does the person have to sell, depending on what point of the side of the net you're on. So yeah, you just still need to get an extension, even with a builder. I'm hoping that helps you, Jane. What other questions?
Question.
Yep.
I understand that you are asking people. Sorry, I have a little bit of a blowback here on sound.
It's okay, Patty. Who has a question until Patty gets back? This is your opportunity. Damone, do you have a question? Because I see you talking, but you're on mute. I don't hear anything. By the way, Damone, you still got the trophy. You had the best question so far.
I appreciate it, Rich. No, I'm thinking out loud.
Okay, no worries. I do that all the time.
Let me ask this. What's your take on CHFA loans?
On what type of loans?
CHFA. So down payment assistance loans.
When we had them, I haven't seen them around in a while. I'm sure they're around, with just not a lot of them. When they had them back in 2005, 2006, we had those. They take a long time to close, and the people had to qualify. They had to take a class back in the heyday. I don't know if that's still applicable today. In this type of market, it's really hard, Damone, because from the seller's point of view, it's not a type of loan that poses any advantage to the seller.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of advantages to the buyer, right? So how do you sell that to the listing agent? That's a hard sell.
Right.
So again, you've got to think from the other perspective, and you've got to tell your buyers to think if you were the other person. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't do them. Here's what you're going to do. You on those type of loans, you're probably looking for houses, like if it's a hot deal and there's 5 offers, you're not going to get it, right? So you're looking at houses that have been on the market because there's a problem with the house, there's a problem with the condition, there's a problem with repairs, there's a cosmetic appearance problem, or they're overpriced. Any house in Florida that's been on the market more than 14 days has one or all of those issues I just mentioned.
Right.
They're overpriced. There's a problem with condition, appearance, cosmetics. So you're probably looking at one of those houses, and it's a question. And I would say, Damone, if you were my buyer, I'd say, was that your intention? That's the type of house you want to buy. And you're probably going to say no. Okay, so if you'd like to buy a hot market, a house that's beautiful and something like that, what do you think we have to do to structure the deal to get that? Because we have to think like the seller in order to get that done. Now, if they don't have any other choice and that's their only pathway to getting it, then you're stuck with that. That's going to be a long-term nurture to get that person under contract.
Right.
Right. Then you have to ask yourself, remember this. People would always ask me, because in Florida, there's a lot of crazy people in Orlando. Just remember this. When a person waves the crazy flag, pay attention. Pay attention. So if they're waving their behavior, what they say to you is so outrageously stupid or so outlandish that you say, oh my God, you say to yourself, I can't believe a person thinks that way. Well, what do you think happens as they get closer to the closing? Do you think the behavior gets better or worse?
Worse.
Stress goes up. So when a person waves the crazy flag today, and I always, when an agent comes to me and say, what do I do? And it's the week before closing, and they're showing signs of insanity, the buyer, the customer, not the agent, right? And they get closer. I say, okay, so here's my question. So at what point did they wave the white flag and say they were crazy and you decided not to pay attention? because that didn't just happen. People don't just become crazy. They're always crazy. The agent chose not to pay attention. And I said, if your business was healthy and you had so many leads, wouldn't it be great if you can just weed out all the crazies and say no to them now? So you need to have a business from abundance that you have. Isn't that a great feeling when you can say, I'm going to work with you, you, and you. I'm going to choose not to work with you because we're not in alignment. Our beliefs are not the same. I don't allow people to curse at me or in front of me or anything of the sort. So I'm just offended by that, and I'm going to choose not to work with you. Would you like me to get another agent to work with you, or would you like to do that yourself? Wouldn't that be wonderful? Guys, if you don't have standards, guys, then you're willing to work with anybody, and that's just not true with me. When I was in production, I had standards. Yes, Lisa?
Would it be appropriate to ask someone that I'm speaking with on the phone for the first time before that initial consultation to obtain that pre-approval? Or would that be too forward or too aggressive?
No, I would just ask them and say, so Lisa, so I know that we're going to sit down and we're going to meet tomorrow at 2 o'clock. One of the questions I'm going to have is, have you been pre-approved by a bank or a mortgage broker yet? I'm just asking a question. Have you been? And the person says, no, I bought 12 houses. I'll do that later. Well, it's okay, great. So I will, that's going to be one of our talking points at our appointment tomorrow. I'm going to bring that up and show you the benefits of how it can save you time and money by being approved prior to us looking at houses. And that is what you want, Lisa, if I'm not correct. Most buyers I speak to want to buy the dream come true house in the least amount of time with the least amount of headaches for the least amount of money. Is that true with you also?
No.
That's the first time you hear the crazy, they're waving the white flag, right? They're telling you they're crazy at that, right? So they're going to say yes, right? And you say, great, that's exactly why tomorrow's going to be all about you.
Okay, thank you.
See, it's just knowing how to handle that. It's a conversation. It's not, don't confuse conversation with confrontation, guys. So what other questions do we have? Does anybody else have any other questions? Did you guys enjoy today's class?
I certainly did.
So
Yes,
we're going
it
to
was
be
great.
So whether you're in one of my market centers or as a Bold coach, I've adopted 22 other market centers other than the 7 that I have ownership in. And they're in New York, Kentucky, New Jersey, Connecticut, and Minnesota. And I'm going to be teaching a series of classes. I'm going to be teaching next month the mindset of a mega agent. And I believe that's on November. I'm just looking up. Mindset of a Mega Agent is on November 5th at 11 o'clock. November 5th at 11 o'clock. In other words, how many people aspire to be a mega agent? Raise your hand. A lot of you probably already are. So if you want to, like friends of mine, Bob Lucido, Ben Kenny, Cody Gibson, Lance Loken, all these people close over 1,500 units a year. They close anywhere from 1,500 houses to 2,500 houses a year. They're not any smarter than you and I. Here's what they do different. They think different. Doesn't make them smarter. They don't think like you and I. They think from abundance. They talk about and strategize about revenue, not expenses, right? So these are the wealthy people. Wealthy people are wealthy because they have a different process to process data, information, right? So average people or poor people want to talk about limitations, what they can't do. Rich people want to talk about possibilities, right? Poor people want to talk about, they want to complain about things. Wealthy people want to talk about gratitude. So there's difference in mindset. So if you want to be a mega agent, I'm going to share with you, I have 38 different things that mega agents think and do. Teach that class will be on November 5th at 11 o'clock. If you want to know what those 38 things are, tune in. It's absolutely free, by the way, guys. So any questions on anything from today? If not, I'm wrapping up, guys. I appreciate you. If there's something you'd like us to teach, please go to your team leaders and ask them to contact me to see if either I or one of the other Bolt coaches will put that class on for you. We're here to help you. We know it's a challenge right now with COVID, with racial unrest, things going on in the country. We are here to support you in any way we can at MAPS and BOLD. We just want to make sure that you're living the life that you choose to live, as opposed to living the life just by existence. In other words, don't exist. Go out and choose the life you want to live. Make decisions. These are choices you have to make every day. And guys, if there's one thing we can do to make this a better place, a better community, better company, a better world, is you need to love your brothers and sisters. Everybody on this call is a brother and sister, right? We are all from the same place. I don't care what your race, religion, color, creed. We need to do a lot more hugging and loving and a lot less hatred. There's so much hatred in the world. I'm sick. I'll be 61 years old. I've never seen this before. I'm embarrassed to say what's going on in the world. We need to love and accept one another. No exceptions. We just need to love one another. And if everybody did that, the world would be a better place. So with that being said, guys, I appreciate each and every one of you, and hopefully I'll see you at the next training. I'll speak to you soon.
Thank you so much.
And don't forget to sign up for BOLD. It starts next week. BOLD.
Sign up.
There you go. Good for you, Maureen. I'll see you at BOLD. I'm one of the instructors there.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.